there's nothing like a good revenge story. It gets your heart racing, it causes you to lean in, and you can't wait for the ending of the book or the ending of the movie where the main character enacts her revenge. One of my wife's most favorite movies is Taken. She absolutely loves the actor Liam Neeson. And in this movie, he discovers that his daughter has been kidnapped, his only daughter. Through a series of events, he actually gets on the phone with one of the kidnappers. He's trying to beg the kidnapper to give his daughter back. And when he realizes that's not going to happen, he says on the phone, he goes, "I will look for you, I will find you, and I will kill you." And the whole movie is his pursuit to get his daughter back. And I'm just telling you, as a dad, what I wouldn't do to get my daughters back. As a husband, what I wouldn't do to protect my wife. I mean, right? As just who I am as Chris Trethewey, I would do anything to protect my family. And this whole movie just causes me to lean in. It's like, yeah, that's right. That's what you would do for your family. I think about the cult classic movie, The Princess Bride. If you've never watched this movie, you should watch it. If you haven't for a while, you need to go back and watch it again. But one of the characters in The Princess Bride is Inigo Montoya. And his kind of character storyline is all about, he spent his life training to enact revenge against the person that killed his father. Towards the end of the movie, he actually comes face to face with that person who killed his dad. And actually, he gets stabbed a couple times by a sword, and he's leaning against the wall. And as he's leaning against the wall, almost to die, all of a sudden he goes, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." As he says these words, he gets a little stronger. He starts to stand up a little bit more, and he says with a little bit more strength, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." And with every time he says this line, he gets stronger and stronger, and all of a sudden, well, the other guy's like, "Oh, will you stop saying that?" Well, Inigo Montoya gets his revenge. And then there's that moment in Gladiator where Maximus Decimus Meridius says, "Father to a murdered son, husband to a murdered wife, and I will have my vengeance in this life or next." There's nothing like a good revenge story, isn't there? And here's what we know about a good revenge story. What drives that revenge is the grudge that they're holding on to. How they were wronged, how they were hurt, what that person or those people did to them or a loved one, right? It's the grudge that drives their revenge. But for you and me, what we all understand, what we all grasp when it comes to the grudges that we have, is that when you hold on to a grudge, you can't hold on to anything else. Think about that for a moment. When you hold on to a grudge against a person, it dominates your thoughts, it dominates your heart, it dominates your interactions with other people, and every spare moment you're thinking about that person, those people that hurt you, that wronged you. Now, don't get too tripped up over the word grudge. I mean, you can replace that word with a whole list of words. For instance, when you hold on to betrayal, when that person stabbed you in the back, stabbed you in the front, has kept stabbing you, when that person that you had gone all in with relationally all of a sudden walked away from you, betrayed you. When you hold on to a broken trust, I mean, you thought you could trust him, you thought you could trust her, and then you found out, and then you read, and then you discovered, and what you thought was true isn't true. When you hold on to criticism, that person who said those words to you, and maybe they had good intentions, but how you heard those words, how you receive those words, that criticism cut so deep when you hold on to conflict. Maybe it's just personality conflict. Here's what we all know. We all know this. Every single person is different. We know that. I mean, when we look and have conversations and interact with different people, we know that they're different personalities. But guess what we all have a tendency of doing? We then expect them to respond like we respond. We expect them to process like we process. We expect them to interact like we want to be interacted with. We start to put our personality on everyone else, and then we wonder why there's conflict. Or maybe it's just perspective conflict, where you're in a conversation with someone, and they just have a different perspective than us. And all of a sudden, you start to hold a grudge. Maybe it's disrespect. How they look at you, how you feel like they're talking down to you. And so many times disrespect is connected back to someone maybe a year or 10 years or 20 years before, but you've been holding on to it for that long. Or maybe it's abandonment. A mom, a dad that just walked out of your life. A spouse that walked away from you. A boyfriend or girlfriend that said, I don't want to be with you anymore. A friend that you thought you'd be friends for the rest of your life, and now you're not. A researcher say that the average person will lose between 5 to 7 friendships in a lifetime. And that's a lot. Maybe you've lost a few more or a few less, but that's the average. But I want to share something with you. Not to make you feel bad, not for guilt, not for any other reason, but to paint a picture. Again, the average person, 5 to 7 people will walk away from them. They'll lose 5 to 7 relationships in a year. When it comes to pastors, do you know the number is 5 to 7 people a year? I've been in church leadership for now approaching 30 years. You do the math. You see, I share that. Again, not to make you feel bad, not to make you feel guilty, none of that. I just share that to say, this series, The Grudge, is as much for me as it is for you. How do we handle all of this hurt? How do we handle all of this loss? How do we handle the pain that comes from relationships? Now, one thing I want to just be clear upon, not only for this first part of this series, but as we make our way through this entire series, please know, healthy relationships must have healthy boundaries. And I just want you to hear me say this. When we say things like, well, you need to let go of, does not mean you shouldn't have healthy boundaries around unhealthy aspects or around unhealthy people. Actually, really healthy relationships always contain healthy boundaries. So just know that. Again, today and as we make our way through the series, yes, have healthy boundaries. But also, there's things that we need to let go of. Why? Because if you're holding on to a grudge, you can't hold on to anything else. Now, this list is a really intense list, isn't it? This list. This is a heavy, weighty list. But when it comes to revenge and when it comes to holding a grudge, there's one area that, well, I think it's so easy for us to overlook that actually does some of the most damage when it comes to our relationships. You want to know what that is? It's unmet expectations. Let me explain. About a month ago, it was a freezing January day. My family, my wife and I, we were hunkered down in our house, and it was one of those days where we didn't want to leave at all the entire day. But all of a sudden, as I was starting to look through our refrigerator, I realized there's a few groceries we had to have. Only 3 to 4 items, just a few. But no one wanted to leave the house. So as Kim and I were talking, all of a sudden I realized I had to hit the hardware store for something that I had to have for the house. And I was like, you know what? I'll just go to the grocery store to pick up those 3 or 4 items, and then I'll hit the hardware store, and then I'll come back home. Kim said, great, and I started to get ready to go and make sure I had the right part that I needed at the hardware store and all of that. And all of a sudden, I went to say goodbye to Kim, and she said something that caught me a little bit off guard. She goes, hey, I just want to let you know I've called in a curbside pickup. Now, her intentions were great, but it kind of bothered me. Why? It doesn't matter why, but it did. I remember feeling like it's only about 3 to 4 items. I just need to pull up, jump out of my truck, run in, grab them, come back, get on my truck, go to the hardware store and come back home. But now I have to deal with curbside pickup, and I'd never done curbside pickup at this grocery store. So now I have to learn a new thing, and I was just kind of frustrated. Well, when I left the house, got in my truck. It's freezing cold outside. I got to the grocery store. Now I'm trying to find the right spot to park in for the curbside pickup. And I noticed that there was a car parked in spot number 1, and there's another car parked in spot number 2. So I parked in spot number 3. I sat there, and I was reading through the app to make sure I was doing this all right. And again, there was just I'm like, why? Why can't I just be in the store right now? Well, I noticed one of the employees came out of the grocery store and loaded groceries into the car in spot number 1, and the employee went back in. A few moments later, the employee came back out and loaded groceries in the car in the spot number 2, and then went back in. And I'm sitting in spot number 3. I'm sitting in my truck running with the signs to spot number 3, and I waited 5 minutes. No employee came back up. And all of a sudden, it just started to churn within me. And all of a sudden, I waited another 5 minutes. I'm texting with my wife, like, what's going on? Why aren't they coming out? They see me here. I'm creating storylines within my mind. But they never came back out. Then another 5 minutes. And then all of a sudden, I get a text on the app that says, please go into the store to pick up your groceries. I tell you, it erupted within me. I slammed my truck door. I started to march into that grocery store. It was only, 12 and a half yards. It wasn't far. But then I started to rehearse exactly what I was going to say to those employees. And I got to the door and I paused. It wasn't a long pause. Hear that. It wasn't long, but I paused. And God just kind of whispered to me, Chris, really? Really? You're going to walk in this store and unleash on these employees? And then I heard God kind of say, do you know your profession? You're a pastor, and you're going to make a public. And I just started to laugh. I'm like, I got mad over curbside pickup. I took a deep breath. I walked in the store. I looked at a very nice employee and just said, hey, I've been waiting outside, but I got a message saying to come in to get my groceries quickly. She apologized. She goes, let me make a call. All of a sudden, the manager comes to me, and without me saying anything, she goes, I am so sorry. She goes, can I see what your phone said? So I showed her the message on the phone, on the app. She goes, we've been having technology issues all day. It's beyond our control. It's all the way up the chain. There's nothing we can do. I'm so sorry. I took a deep breath. What's interesting, in a few short minutes, and a whole list of unmet expectations, I already was holding my grudge. I was holding it tight. I had played a whole storyline in my brain. I knew exactly what I was going to say to my wife when I got home. I was just going to say, yeah, that didn't save me any time. I had it all rehearsed. I had my speech ready. I was going to launch verbal missiles. I was ready to let the employees know exactly what I thought of the company. And that grudge started to quickly seep down underneath beneath the surface. And here's what I know, and you know this to be true too. When we hold on to a grudge and we don't let go of it, it always plants bitterness in our hearts. In fact, the Bible talks about bitterness as a root that we have to pull up, because if not, it grows and it entangles itself into every relationship. I'm just glad that day, in that moment, I paused outside the door. I'm just thankful in that moment I paused and God slapped me around and I listened to him. I'm so glad in that moment I recognized that I was holding on to a grudge, unmet expectations. Feels so small, but guess what? It's how quickly it enveloped my soul. If I wouldn't have recognized it, bitterness would have been fed and would have grown. Today, we're going to look at a story. Now, what's interesting about this story is a couple things. One is there's very few details that we know about the story. There's big gaps in the story, but here's the thing. We all have relationships. We've all had different relationships, good relationships and bad relationships. And I'm just telling you, we can fill in these gaps. Another thing is there's some extremes to the story, and probably we haven't dealt with the extremes of the story, but here's the thing. We've all dealt with people who have hurt us and people who we have hurt. You see, the story starts right at the beginning of the Bible. It's right after Adam and Eve disobey God. They sin, and God removes them from the garden. He kicks them out of the garden. And all of a sudden, Genesis 4, this is how this part of the story starts. We're told that Adam made love with his wife Eve, and she became pregnant and gave birth to Cain. Now, this is a celebration moment. I mean, it's the first family, and they had just had their first child. I mean, this is a celebration moment. I mean, the blue balloons were being released. They had a son. And we're told that she, Eve, said, "With the help of the Lord, I have brought forth a man." And this is such a significant insight. With the help of God, Adam and Eve, again, just got kicked out of the garden. Why? Because they said to God, "Nope, we're going to eat from the tree we want to because we want to be like you." And now you could just sense Eve going, "Wow, we made a mess." And now her obedience and her dependence and her reliance is back on God. And she goes, "Hey, with the help of God, I have given birth to a boy, to Cain." And then later, we're told, she gave birth to his brother Abel. Now comes one of those big gaps. There's this big gap, and all of a sudden, the story continues, and we're told that Abel kept flocks and Cain worked the soil. Now, we don't know their age other than they're probably, grown men at this time, and they both kind of have their area of work. One raising animals, other one's working the ground. And this gets tied back to the curse that man would work by the sweat of their brow. And so Cain and Abel, again, grown men now. We don't know anything about their childhood. They're now out at work. And then a new insight is revealed to us. In the course of time, again, we don't know how much time this is, but in the course of time, Cain brought some of the fruits of the soil as an offering to the Lord. And Abel brought, an offering, the fat portions from some of the firstborn of his flocks. Now, a couple things emerge here. The first thing is they're bringing their offering as an act of worship to God. I mean, this is right, the first family, Adam and Eve, their first two kids, Cain and Abel. Already at the very beginning of time, there's this, the desire to bring offering in an act of worship to God. And so this is what they're doing. Now, Cain and Abel both brought something different. Why? Because they both had, different jobs. We're told Cain brought some of the fruits of the the soil, some. And it's a really key word here. But Abel brought the fat portions of the firstborn. Abel brought the best that he had, but Cain brought some. Now, in the New Testament, in the book of Hebrews, the author writes this: by faith, Abel brought God a better offering than Cain did. And this is really important because two things that we're going to see revealed here in this story is not just what was brought, but the heart behind what was brought. It wasn't just the firstborn and the fat portions and the crops, but it was the heart behind the desire to give God either the best or not quite the best to God. Then, we're told, the Lord looked with favor on Abel and his offering. Again, both what he brought, but also the heart behind what he brought. But on Cain and his offering, he did not look with favor. So Cain was very angry and his face was downcast. And we got to ask the question, why? Why? I mean, we have to assume Cain knew what he did. He knew he didn't bring the best. He knew his heart position wasn't in the right place. He just knew, just like I knew walking into the grocery store. I knew exactly where my heart was. It was not in a good place. So Cain was angry and his face was downcast. Who was he angry with? Why was he so upset? Where was he focusing his anger? And we're told that God said to Cain, and I think this is such an important moment, that God comes to Cain, that God, face to face with Cain, God connects with Cain. God knows exactly Cain's heart position, and God still meets Cain right where he was. And God looks at Cain and says, why are you angry? Why is your face so downcast? Hey, Cain, what's going on within you? God knew the answer. He was just trying to get Cain to pay attention to what was going on inside of him. He was trying to get Cain to pause. Say, hey, Cain, come on. Look at yourself. What's going on within you? You need to pay attention to the unhealth within you. And God goes, hey, Cain, if you do what is right, oh, God of second chances. Hey, Cain, you have an opportunity to do the right thing. Hey, Cain, you have an opportunity to make this right. Hey, Cain, I'm giving you a second chance. Come on, Cain. You know what I'm talking about. I don't need to say it to you. If you do the right things, will you not be accepted? Hey, Cain, come on. Can you feel God saying, come on, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing, do the right thing. Come on, Cain. But, God says, if you do not do what is right, there's a choice. There's a path. Hey, Cain, you know your parents' story? They had a choice. Eat anything and everything from the garden except for the one tree. You know the story, Cain. I'm giving you the same choice. Cain, do what is right. But if you do not do what is right, sin is crouching at your door. It desires to have you, but you must rule over it. It's this image of sin being this untamed, wild, vicious animal, just waiting to pounce. God knew that Cain couldn't control his sin that's waiting to pounce on him. He knew at some point he would have a weak moment. At some point, he would look the other way. At some point, he would overlook the tenacity of his sin wanting to end him. But he gave him choice. Now we have another gap, another space of time. And then we're told, now Cain said to his brother one day, hey, Abel, let's go out to the field. And while they were in the field, Cain attacked his brother Abel and killed him. One of the gaps we have to pay attention to is what took place between the warning and actually Cain going through to kill his own brother. I just think about how many times he just replayed this whole storyline in his mind. I wonder how many times he would look at his brother and like, oh yeah, yours was so much better than mine. I wonder how many times he blamed his parents. Oh yeah, you guys like my brother more than me, and God likes Abel more than me. Like, just think about all the things he started replaying in his mind over and over and over again. Think about the number of times of him blaming his brother, blaming his parents, blaming God. Think about the conversations until one day, all of that bitterness, and that word isn't even in this story, but it is at the root of the story. All of that bitterness to God, to his parents, to his brother, grows and leads him to killing his own brother. He goes, let's go to the field. And while they're in there in the field, Cain attacked his brother. That word attack means to rise up. And he killed him. Then the Lord said to Cain, hey, where's your brother Abel? Again, God knows the answer. God knows exactly what's happening. He goes, hey, where's your brother? And listen to Cain's response. He goes, I don't know. He lies directly to God. And then he goes, am I my brother's keeper? He tries to deflect that whole thing. He's so defensive. It's like, I'm not responsible for him. And God goes, what have you done? Listen, your brother's blood cries out to me from the ground. Well, the story goes on, and the punishment that God hands Cain is pretty significant. He becomes a restless wanderer the rest of his life, but God puts his mark on him to make sure that no one would kill him. You see, I think about this story, and again, there's so many gaps in the story, but we know at the root of the story is just bitterness, isn't there? Bitterness. That Cain was bitter at God for not accepting his gift. He was bitter probably at his parents, blaming them for making the mess, for them disobeying God. He was bitter at his brother Abel for bringing the fat portion. I mean, just all of that bitterness grew and grew and grew and grew to the point where he killed his brother, to the point where the rest of his life he was a restless wanderer. It grew to such a point that think about the damage that it did to the entire family. But let me ask you the question. How do we feed bitterness? Again, the story has some extremes to it, granted. But think about this. How do we feed bitterness? One of the ways we feed bitterness is we replay conversations over and over again. Again, I wonder how many times Cain replayed that conversation in his head before he even said to his brother, hey, let's go out to the field. I call them shower conversations, where when someone hurts us, when we're betrayed, when we're abandoned, when we're criticized, right? Whatever that list is, when that happens and hurt emerges, and all of a sudden we start replaying the conversation that we're going to have, we start thinking through the text message we're going to send, we start thinking about it, and next time I see them in the grocery store, I know what I'm going to do, right? We start replaying all in our mind, and guess what that does? It feeds bitterness. We blame. God tried to get Cain to own his stuff, and he refused. God's like, come on, you'll be accepted. Just do what is right. Do the right thing. And here's the thing, within all of our humanity, we are so quick to blame everyone else, then look in the mirror and what's going on within us. I think about my pause in front of the grocery store. I was blaming everyone else. And the pause caused me to lift my head. I'm like, why am I so angry about something so stupid? My wife was trying to serve me to do curbside pickup. Technology doesn't work. That happens. Oh, by the way, we have groceries that we can just go pick up and put in our truck and our vehicles and eat that day. We don't have to plant everything and grow everything and care for livestock. Like, we have grocery stores. On the scale of life, we're living in some good times. I was so quick just to blame everyone when there was something within me that God was trying to get my attention to. What's going on within you? We keep score. We do this all the time without even knowing. A person looks at us a certain way, we keep score. A person says something quite not right, we keep score. A person makes a decision and we start questioning all of the motives behind the decision. We keep a score. We start to keep score and we have the score pad and all of a sudden we start tallying up. And you know all that does is that feeds bitterness. And bitterness grows and grows and grows and grows. And we divide. All of a sudden we start to use our words, our position, our platform, our relationships, our personality to start dividing people away. Cain got Abel away from his parents. He said, hey, let's go into the field. Something I'm sure Abel felt like it was so innocent. And we do that with our words. We do that with our decisions. We do that all the time. And it's feeding bitterness. And here's the thing with bitterness. It impacts every relationship we have. Hear this. Bitterness impacts every relationship. So, in this series, The Grudge, we got to remember that getting back will always get us back. As we make our way through this series, hopefully it brings some healing to relationships and healing within you, and that you will start to uproot bitterness that's lurking in the shadows. So, see this box? Right now, there's one person. I'm sure there's more, but there's one that you're holding a grudge against. I want you to put a name in that box right now. You know that name. And we're going to pray. And when we pray, I just want you to open your hands. I just want you to open your hands and pray with me. And let go of whatever you're holding on to against this person. Just let go. Just let go. Because if you're holding on to a grudge, you can't hold on to anything else. Got the name? Got the name. Let's pray. Lord, I just pray for every single person that they'll let go. Lord, I pray for every single person that you'll give them the courage to face the hurt and let go. Lord, I pray for every single person that you'll give them peace in the letting go. And that, Lord, they'll do what is right. That they'll do what is right. And that they will let go. And that they'll start intentionally uprooting bitterness so that they can experience the freedom that comes from loving like you've called us to love. In your name I pray. Amen.